The guitar case clicks open on a mahogany desk in a lawyer's office on East 57th Street, and the man across from John Lennon doesn't reach for it right away. His name is Robert Keating. He's 43 years old, a collector who made his fortune in steel. And he's been waiting 6 weeks for this meeting. The guitar inside the case is a 1958 Rickenbacker 325, the one Lennon played during the Beatles' first appearance on Ed Sullivan, the one in 1,000 photographs, the one that helped teach America what the 60s were going to sound like, the one John Lennon swore he'd never sell. "You can examine it," Lennon says. His voice is quiet, flattened out. He's wearing sunglasses even though they're inside, even though it's February and the light coming through the windows is thin and gray. "Go ahead." Keating still doesn't move. He's looking at Lennon instead of the guitar, and what he sees doesn't match the magazine covers. This man is thinner than he should be. There are shadows under his jaw. His hands are resting on his knees, and they're perfectly still in a way that suggests enormous effort. "Are you sure about this?" Keating asks. "The price is $100,000, Lennon says, not answering the question. "Cash, as discussed. The sale is private. No documentation. No press. You never mention where you got it. I understand the terms. I'm asking if you're sure." Now Lennon takes off his sunglasses. His eyes are bloodshot, exhausted. "Do you want the guitar or not?" Keating reaches for the case slowly. Inside, the Rickenbacker sits in red velvet exactly as promised. The finish has the wear you'd expect from being played hard in clubs and studios and television appearances that changed popular music. There are scuff marks near the bridge, a small crack in the pickguard that was never repaired. This isn't a museum piece kept pristine. This is a working instrument that built a career. "It's beautiful," Keating says. "It was," Lennon corrects. Then he lights a cigarette with hands that aren't quite steady. "The money's ready?" Keating gestures to his briefcase. Cashier's check. Untraceable. "Exactly what you asked for. Not a check. Cash." Something changes in Keating's expression. Mr. Lennon carrying $100,000 in cash through Manhattan. "Cash," Lennon repeats. That was the deal. Keating is quiet for a moment. Then he opens a different briefcase, one that's been sitting beside his chair. Inside are stacks of $100 bills, bound and counted. He slides it across the desk. Lennon looks at the money, but doesn't touch it. He just stares at it like it's something poisonous, like it's proof of something he doesn't want to admit. "Can I ask what this is for?" Keating says carefully, "You don't have to tell me, but if you're in some kind of trouble, I'm not in trouble. Because if someone's pressuring you, if theirs, it's for my son," Lennon says. The words come out hard and fast, like he's trying to get them out before he can stop himself. "Julian. My son from my first marriage. He's 8 years old, and he's sick, and his mother doesn't have the money to take him to the specialists in Switzerland who might be able to help. And I can't be the one to pay for it publicly, because it would destroy Yoko. It would make her look like she's keeping me from my own child. It would turn into a circus in the press. So I'm doing it this way, quietly, through lawyers who can make the payment look like it came from somewhere else." Keating doesn't say anything. And before you ask, Lennon continues, "Yes, I have money. Yes, I could write a check from one of my accounts. But they're watched. Everything I do financially gets reported. Apple Corps has accountants. The tax man has accountants. Yoko has accountants. If I suddenly transfer $100,000 to Cynthia, everyone will know. And then it becomes a story. John Lennon abandons new family to pay for old one. Or Yoko Ono forces Lennon to choose. And none of that helps Julian get the treatment he needs. He takes a long drag from his cigarette. So I'm selling the guitar. Privately. To a man who collects things and knows how to keep his mouth shut. And in 3 days, Julian's mother will receive an anonymous donation from a Swiss medical fund that doesn't exist. And she'll take him to Zurich, and maybe they can help him. And I'll never tell anyone I did it, because telling defeats the entire purpose. The office is silent, except for the sound of traffic 17 floors below. Keating looks at the guitar in the case, then at Lennon, then at the money on the desk. "What's wrong with your son?" he asks, quietly. "Does it matter?" "Yes." Lennon closes the guitar case. His hands are gentle with it, the way you'd close a coffin. "Kidney disease. Chronic. He needs treatment that isn't available in England. His mother's been trying for months to figure out how to afford it. She finally called me 2 weeks ago, not asking for money, just asking if I knew anyone, if I had connections, if there was some way." He stops. "She was crying on the phone. Cynthia never cries. And you told her you'd find a way." "I told her I'd handle it. I told her Julian would get the best care available. I told her not to worry." Lennon looks at Keating directly now. "And then I hung up and realized I couldn't do any of those things publicly, without making it worse for everyone, including Julian." Keating reaches for the briefcase with the money and closes it. Then he slides it back across the desk toward himself. Lennon's face goes hard. "What are you doing?" "I'm not buying the guitar. We had a deal. The deal was contingent on me believing this was a legitimate sale. It's not. You're in crisis. You're making a decision under duress. And frankly, Mr. Lennon, if I take this guitar, I become part of something I don't want to be part of." Lennon stands up so fast, his chair scrapes backward. "You're the one who's been calling for 6 weeks. You're the one who said you'd pay anything for a piece of Beatles history. You're the one. I said I'd pay anything for a guitar John Lennon wanted to sell. Not for a guitar John Lennon is being forced to sell, because he's trapped between his past and his present and doesn't know how to be honest about either one." The silence that follows is dangerous. Lennon's hands are shaking now, not from weakness, but from rage. Or maybe it's something worse than rage. Maybe it's the kind of desperation that comes when the last option disappears. "My son is sick," he says, and his voice breaks on the word son. "He needs help. I can provide that help, but only if I do it this way. So take the fucking guitar and give me the fucking money. Or get out and let me find someone else who will." Keating doesn't move. "How much does the treatment cost?" "What?" "The specialists in Switzerland. The treatment, how much?" 40,000, maybe 50 with travel and accommodation. The rest is for whatever comes after. Physical therapy, medications, follow-up care, I don't know exactly. I just know it needs to be enough." Keating opens his briefcase, the first one, with the cashier's check. He takes out his checkbook instead. "What's your son's mother's name?" "Cynthia Powell. Lennon, technically, but she doesn't use it anymore." Keating writes out a check. His handwriting is clear, deliberate. When he's finished, he tears it out and holds it up. $50,000 made out to Cynthia Lennon. "I'm going to mail this to her directly with a letter explaining that it's a medical grant from the Keating Foundation, which is a real organization that does, among other things, provide assistance for children with serious illnesses. She'll receive it in 2 days. The money is clean. The foundation is legitimate, and you don't have to sell your guitar. Lennon stares at the check. Why? Because someone should help that boy without requiring his father to erase part of his history to do it. You don't even know me. You don't know if I'm telling the truth. You're telling the truth. Keating sets the check on the desk. I can tell, because you're furious with yourself for being in this position. Not with me. Not with your ex-wife. With yourself. And that's the anger of a man who knows he's made mistakes and is trying to fix them the only way he knows how, even if that way is complicated and painful and costs something he doesn't want to lose. Lennon doesn't pick up the check. He just looks at it. Then at Keating. Then at the guitar case. Keep the guitar, Keating says. Or give it to your son someday. Tell him his father held on to it. Because some things matter more than money. I can't accept this. You're not accepting it. Your son is. There's a difference. I'll pay you back. Don't. Just help the next person who needs it. Quietly, if that's what works. Publicly, if you're ever brave enough. But help them. Keating picks up his briefcases and walks to the door. Before he opens it, he turns back. For what it's worth, Mr. Lennon, I think you're trying to do the right thing in an impossible situation. That's worth something, even if it doesn't feel like it right now. Then he's gone, and John Lennon is alone in a lawyer's office with a guitar he almost sold and a check for $50,000, and the understanding that he's just been seen in a way he didn't want to be seen. He sits down, lights another cigarette, looks at the guitar case for a long time. The Rickenbacker inside has been part of his identity longer than anything else in his life, longer than the Beatles, longer than his marriages, longer than his fame. It was there when he was nobody, playing clubs in Hamburg and Liverpool, believing that music could change something even if he didn't know what. It was there when he was somebody, playing Ed Sullivan and Shea Stadium, discovering that music could change everything, except the things that really mattered. And he'd been willing to sell it, to convert it into cash and hand it to a stranger and watch it disappear into someone's private collection where no one would ever play it again. He'd been willing to do that for Julian, which should feel noble, but instead just feels like proof of how completely he's failed at being a father. Because a good father wouldn't be in this position. A good father would have enough money in the right accounts to help his sick child without needing to sell pieces of his past. A good father would have maintained a relationship with his ex-wife that allowed for honest communication about their son's needs. A good father wouldn't be trapped between two families, unable to help one without hurting the other. A good father wouldn't need a stranger to write a check because he's too famous and too watched and too tangled in his own complications to just help his child directly. The cigarette burns down to his fingers. He stubs it out. Then he picks up the check and puts it in his pocket. Not because he's going to keep it, because he's going to deliver it personally. He's going to drive to Cynthia's flat in Kensington and hand it to her and explain where it came from and tell her the truth about what he almost did. And maybe she'll be angry. Maybe she'll tell him he's a coward for not being able to help his own son openly. Maybe she'll throw the check back at him. But at least it will be honest. At least Julian will get the help he needs. At least one thing in this entire mess will be real. The guitar case sits on the desk, still closed. Lennon looks at it for one more moment. Then he picks it up and walks out of the office, carrying it like evidence of something he can't quite name. Outside, the February afternoon is gray and cold. Manhattan moves around him with the indifference of a city that has seen everything and been impressed by nothing. Taxis honk. People push past. Someone recognizes him and starts to approach, then sees his expression and changes direction. Lennon walks 3 blocks before he realizes he doesn't know where he's going. He stops on a corner, guitar case in hand, trying to remember where he parked. But the truth is, he didn't drive. He took a cab, because he didn't trust himself to drive after what he was about to do. He'd planned to sell the guitar, take the cash, go straight to the bank, arrange the wire transfer through lawyers, and then go home to the Dakota and pretend everything was fine. He'd planned to lie by omission for the rest of his life, to never tell Yoko or Julian or anyone else that he'd sold a piece of his history to pay for medical treatment, to let the guitar disappear into some collector's vault and never think about it again. And now he's standing on a Manhattan street corner with a guitar he didn't sell and a check he didn't earn, and the understanding that Robert Keating saw through him in about 30 seconds. A cab pulls up. Lennon gets in without deciding to. Kensington, he tells the driver, then catches himself. No. Wait, do you know where Cynthia Lennon lives? The driver looks at him in the rearview mirror. The Beatles guy's ex-wife? Yeah. No idea, mate. That public record? Never mind. Just drive. I'll figure it out. They pull into traffic. Lennon sits in the back seat with a guitar case across his lap, watching the city slide past. He's thinking about Julian, 8 years old, sick with something Lennon doesn't fully understand, because he hasn't been there to understand it. He's thinking about Cynthia, who married him when he was nobody, and divorced him when he became somebody else. He's thinking about Yoko, waiting for him at home, not knowing where he went this afternoon or why. He's thinking about all the ways you can fail people by trying not to hurt them. All the ways secrets accumulate until you're carrying so many you forget which ones are protecting others and which ones are just protecting yourself. The cab driver is playing the radio. Imagine comes on. Lennon's own voice fills the back seat, singing about no possessions and nothing to kill or die for, and all the people sharing all the world. It's a beautiful sentiment, a perfect dream. It's also a lie, because Lennon has possessions. He was willing to sell one today for $100,000, and there are things to kill or die for, or at least things to sacrifice for, to compromise for, to sell pieces of yourself for. And people don't share the world. They divide it up into private territories, and build walls, and keep secrets, and hurt each other, trying not to hurt each other. You want me to change the station? The driver asks. No, Lennon says, leave it. He listens to himself sing about a world that doesn't exist while sitting in a cab in a world that does, while holding a guitar he almost sold, while carrying a check written by a stranger who understood something about him that Lennon doesn't want to understand about himself, that he's human, that he fails, that love doesn't solve everything, and fame doesn't protect you from the small, grinding difficulties of being a father and an ex-husband and a man trying to do right by everyone and succeeding at doing right by no one. The song ends. A commercial comes on, the cab keeps moving through traffic. Actually, Lennon says, take me to the Dakota, West 72nd Street. The driver changes lanes without comment. They drive in silence for 10 minutes. When they pull up in front of the building, Lennon pays and gets out. He stands on the sidewalk with his guitar case, looking up at the building where he lives, where Yoko is probably waiting, where he'll walk in and she'll ask how his day was, and he'll have to decide how much truth to tell. He could tell her everything about the guitar, and the money, and Julian's illness, and the stranger who wrote a check. He could confess the whole complicated mess and let her help him figure out what to do next. Or he could tell her nothing. Could say the meeting was fine, the guitar stayed in the case, everything is handled. Could add another secret to the collection. The doorman holds the door open. "Evening, Mr. Lennon." Lennon walks inside without answering. Takes the elevator to the 7th floor. Opens the apartment door. Inside, everything is exactly as he left it. Clean and expensive, and carefully arranged. A life that looks perfect from the outside. Yoko is in the white room, the one they use for meditation and creativity. She's sitting on the floor, sketching. When she hears him, she looks up and smiles. "How was it?" she asks. Lennon sets the guitar case down carefully. "Complicated. Did you sell it?" He'd told her he was meeting with a collector, that someone had made an offer. He hadn't told her why he was considering it, or what he needed the money for. He just said he was thinking about simplifying, about letting go of things from the past that he didn't need anymore. "No," he says. "I kept it." "Good." Yoko goes back to her sketching. "I'm glad. That guitar is part of you." Lennon wants to tell her that's exactly why he was willing to sell it. That sometimes the parts of yourself are the only currency you have for the things that really matter. That being part of him means it's his to sacrifice, when sacrifice is required. But he doesn't say any of that. He just says, "I need to make a phone call." In the other room, he dials Cynthia's number. It rings 4 times before she answers. "Hello? Sin. It's John." There's a pause. Not hostile, just careful. "Is everything okay?" "Yeah, listen. You're going to receive a check in the mail in a couple of days. $50,000. It's for Julian's treatment. It's from a medical foundation, but..." He stops. "This is harder than he thought it would be. But I arranged it. Quietly. Through someone who could help." Cynthia is silent for so long, Lennon thinks she might have hung up. Then she says, "You didn't have to do that." "Yes, I did. He's my son. I know. But John, you could have helped directly. I wouldn't have told anyone. I wouldn't have made it complicated. I know. He doesn't know how to explain it. I just couldn't figure out how to do it right. How to help without it becoming something else, something public or painful or tangled up in everything else that's wrong between us." "Nothing's wrong between us," Cynthia says quietly. "We're divorced. We have a child together. That's not wrong. It's just what is." Lennon closes his eyes. She's right. She's always right about these things. The complications are his own creation, built from guilt and fear, and the conviction that his choices have to hurt someone. That he can't be a good father to Julian without being a bad husband to Yoko. That he can't honor his past without betraying his present. "Thank you," Cynthia says. "Really. This will make a huge difference for Julian. Will he be okay?" "I think so. The doctors are optimistic. It's going to be hard. But..." She pauses. "He's going to be okay, John. You helped make that possible." After they hang up, Lennon sits in the dark for a long time. The guitar case is in the other room. The check is in Cynthia's future. Julian will go to Switzerland and get treatment, and maybe recover, and maybe grow up, and maybe forgive his father for all the times he wasn't there. And John Lennon will go on being famous, and complicated, and tangled up in his own failures at being human. But tonight, for just a moment, he let someone see through the complications. Let Robert Keating witness the desperation and the sacrifice, and the impossible position of trying to help your child without destroying your life. And Keating responded not with judgment, but with understanding. Not with a transaction, but with grace. That's the story John Lennon never told. Not because it was shameful, but because it was too honest, too revealing. Too much proof that the man who wrote Imagine can't always imagine his way out of the small, grinding difficulties of being a father to a son he left behind. The guitar stayed in the case. The check was written by someone else. The secret remained secret, not because it had to, but because Lennon chose to let it. And maybe that's the real cost of fame and failure, and trying to do right by everyone. Not that you can't help people, but that you can't help them the way you want to. Not honestly, not cleanly, not without intermediaries and secrets and strangers who write checks, because they understand that sometimes people need help being human. In the White Room, Yoko is still sketching. In Kensington, Cynthia is probably sitting by Julian's bed, telling him everything will be okay. In a lawyer's office on East 57th Street, a guitar case sat on a desk for 30 minutes, while two men negotiated what it means to sacrifice something valuable for something more valuable. And in Manhattan, in the Dakota, in an apartment that costs more than most people make in a lifetime, John Lennon sits in the dark with a guitar he didn't sell and a truth he'll never tell completely. Because some stories are too complicated to share, some failures too human to admit, some moments too private to make public. The guitar is still his. That's what matters. The guitar that played Hamburg and Ed Sullivan and helped teach the world what the 60s would sound like. The guitar that was almost currency, almost sacrifice, almost gone. It's still his. And his son will get the help he needs. And the space between those two facts is where John Lennon lives now. In the gap between what he wanted to do and what he could do. Between the person he wants to be and the person he actually is. That's the story he never told. Not because no one would understand, but because understanding doesn't change anything. The gap remains. The complications remain. The guitar sits in its case, and the check is in the mail, and tomorrow he'll wake up and still be John Lennon. Still be famous, still be failing at simple things while succeeding at impossible ones. And maybe that's enough. Maybe carrying the story in silence is its own kind of truth. Maybe letting Robert Keating see it was enough witness for one life. Maybe Julian getting better is the only ending that matters. The apartment is quiet. Outside, the city continues. Inside, John Lennon sits with a guitar he almost sold, and a secret he'll keep until long after the music stops. That's the cost. Not money, not fame, just the knowing. Just the weight of understanding that love doesn't solve everything. And being right doesn't mean you know how to help. And sometimes the most honest thing you can do is let a stranger write a check, because you're too tangled up to do it yourself. The guitar case is in the other room, still closed, still carrying the weight of what almost happened. And John Lennon sits in the dark, grateful and ashamed in equal measure, which is just another way of saying he's human. That's the story. That's all of it. A guitar that wasn't sold, a check that was written, a father who tried, a stranger who understood, and a secret that stayed secret, because some truths are too complicated to share and too important to forget. The music plays on. The world keeps turning, and somewhere in Switzerland, a boy will get the treatment he needs, never knowing that his father almost sold a piece of history to make it possible. That's enough. It has to be enough. because it's all there is.